Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking all about something that affects every single one of us, cybersecurity.
It does.
And to help us kind of navigate this whole digital jungle I've got, Rami here with me. He's got 15 years of experience in offensive security, which I guess means he thinks like the bad guys.
Yeah.
To help us good guys stay safe.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Excellent.
And yeah, you're right. Cybersecurity is just all over the place these days.
It is. It really is. So for all of us out there, you know, who aren't tech wizards,
Yeah.
let's just start with the basics. We always hear about having this strong security posture. What does that even mean for everyday folks like myself?
Yeah. It's a fancy word, but essentially what it really means is how protected are you against all these online threats that are out there? So if you think about it, like your house, right? You lock your doors, you lock your windows, you do all this stuff without even thinking. Your online accounts need that same kind of protection, that same level of protection.
So it's like locking the digital doors and windows.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, some of the common things that people do. That might actually be weakening their security without even realizing it.
Absolutely. I think a big one is oversharing on social media, Think about those vacation photos that show that you're miles away from home. That's practically an open invitation for somebody to maybe do something.
Right.
Even something as simple as sharing your birthday publicly can be risky because that's just one more piece of the puzzle that identity thieves can use.
Oh, man. I'm definitely guilty of the vacation pics, Speaking of things like this, I almost fell for a phishing scam last week. The email looked exactly like it was from my bank, asking me to update my password. What are some of the things people should look out for with these phishing emails?
Yeah, they are scary. How convincing they can be these days, right? One trick is to check that sender's email address very, very carefully and look for things like misspellings or any weird characters. And if you're ever unsure, I always tell people, just go directly to the company's website or call them. Don't use the contact info from that suspicious email.
Oh, so double check, even if it looks legit.
Always double check.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, what about these social engineering scams that you hear about? That sounds like something straight out of a spy movie.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But it's more common than you think. Essentially, social engineering is all about tricking people into giving up information or access to systems. So it's not about hacking the computer. It's about hacking the human.
Okay, so give us an example. What would that actually look like in everyday life?
Sure. Imagine you're heading into your office building,
right,
and someone's right behind you, struggling with their badge, and they've got a big box. And you hold the door open for them because you're trying to be polite. Boom, they've just tailgated their way into a secure area without any authorization.
So they just snuck in.
Exactly.
Wow, that's unsettling. So it's not always about fancy hacking tools or anything. It can be just as simple as exploiting human kindness.
Absolutely.
What other tactics do these social engineers use?
So another one is what we call baiting. And that's where they might leave a USB drive lying around, labeled confidential salary information, right? Someone picks it up, plugs it into their computer, bam, malware's installed. It preys on our curiosity. Another one is called pretexting. This is where someone might call you, pretending to be from IT, and they ask for your login credentials.
Oh, so how do we protect ourselves from these sneaky tactics? It feels like we have to be suspicious of everyone.
Not necessarily everyone, but you definitely want to be wary of any unsolicited requests. Whether it's an email, a phone call, even someone approaching you in person. If something feels off, trust your gut. Never give out your personal information. Unless you are absolutely sure who you're dealing with, verify.
Trust but verify.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it. So besides being careful about what we share and watching out for social engineering, what are some other things, practical things that people can do to boost their security?
One of the best things you can do is enable multi-factor authentication, or MFA, It's that extra layer of security where you need a code from your phone or email. In addition to your password, studies show it's incredibly effective in preventing account takeovers.
It's like having a deadbolt on your front door. A little extra effort, but a lot more security.
Much more secure.
What else should we be thinking about adding to our little cybersecurity toolkit?
Don't underestimate the power of updates. I know those software update pop-ups can be annoying, but they often include security patches that fix vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit. Think of it as a free security system upgrade for your device.
So staying up to date is like patching the holes in your digital armor.
Exactly.
Now it feels like cybersecurity is this never-ending battle.
It is.
What about the big companies out there? What are they doing to protect themselves and our data from all these threats?
That's a great question. The stakes are much higher for companies. Why don't we dive into that world of enterprise-level security next up?
Sounds good. Let's do it. So we've talked about, what we can all do as individuals, but what about the companies? Companies that we trust with all of our data. What kind of defenses do they have in play?
Well, imagine a company's network is like a castle, and their data is the treasure that they're trying to protect.
Right.
So they're going to start with firewalls, and firewalls act like those castle walls, blocking unauthorized access from the outside world.
So firewalls are like the first line of defense, keeping the invaders at bay.
Exactly.
What else?
They also have something called intrusion detection systems, or IDS for short, and you can think of these as like security cameras that are constantly monitoring the network traffic for any suspicious activity. So if someone's trying to like sneak in or do something they shouldn't be doing, the IDS is going to raise the alarm.
So the firewalls are the walls. The IDS is like the security detail keeping a watchful eye.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But what happens if somebody actually does manage to get past those defenses?
That's where the incident response teams come in. So these are like the cybersecurity SWAT team. They're trained to quickly contain and mitigate any security breaches. So they investigate the incident, they figure out how it happened, and then they take steps to try to prevent it from happening again.
Sounds like a whole military operation going on.
It can be.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Are there any proactive measures that companies take to try to find the weaknesses before the bad guys do?
Absolutely. So one important strategy is called penetration testing, or pen testing. And it's basically ethical hacking, where security professionals actually try to break into the company's systems to find vulnerabilities before real hackers can exploit them.
Oh, so they hire the good hackers to beat the bad hackers at their own game.
Exactly.
I like it. But technology and, all these fancy systems, that's only part of the equation, right?
Yeah.
What about the human factor? We've already talked about how social engineering can target individuals, but I imagine it's a big concern for companies as well.
Yeah, huge concern, because employees are often the weakest link in that cybersecurity chain. And that's why companies invest a lot in security awareness training.
Hopefully those trainings are a little more engaging than, like the typical compliance stuff that we all dread.
Yeah.
What do they cover in these trainings?
Well, they teach employees about different types of cyber threats, like we talked about. Phishing, social engineering, malware. They also emphasize the importance of things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and reporting any suspicious activity that they come across.
So it's all about empowering the employees to be like the first line of defense.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But, as someone who's not like a cybersecurity expert, how do we know? How can we actually know if a company's doing a good job protecting our data?
It's a great question. It can be tough to know for sure. But one thing you can look for is whether they're following certain industry standards and regulations, like GDPR or IIPA. And these frameworks set guidelines for data protection and security practices.
So it's like a seal of approval, saying that they're taking cybersecurity seriously.
Right.
But even with all these measures in place, it feels like these cyber attacks are becoming more frequent and sophisticated. I mean, we hear about big companies getting hacked all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Cyber criminals are constantly upping their game, finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. So it's crucial for these companies to stay ahead of the curve, investing in the latest security technologies, and constantly adapting their defenses. It really is an ongoing arms race.
Constant battle. But what does all this mean for us as individuals, though? How do we take what we've learned about enterprise security and apply it to our own digital lives?
That's a great question. And it's a great segue into our final thoughts about how you can become more cyber aware.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from personal security habits to what companies are doing to try to protect themselves and all their data. What's the biggest takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they go about their digital lives?
I think the key thing to remember is that cybersecurity isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't just do it once and expect to be set for life. You need to constantly be vigilant, stay informed, adapt as new threats emerge.
So it's not about being paranoid. It's more about just being proactive.
Yeah.
And making smart choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the good news is it doesn't have to be complicated. We talked about some really simple but effective steps that everyone can take, like using strong and unique passwords, enabling MFA wherever possible, being wary of those suspicious emails and links, and keeping your software up to date.
Those are all great reminders, and I think it's important to remember that we're not just responsible for our own security,
Yeah.
but also for, holding the companies accountable
Yeah.
for how they're handling our data.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask questions about their security practices and what they're doing to protect your information. If enough of us demand better security, companies are going to have to listen.
It's all about using our collective power as consumers to drive change.
Absolutely.
So what's one thing you want our listeners to do after listening to this discussion?
I would say take a few minutes just to review your own security habits. Have you enabled MFA on your important accounts? Your email, your banking, social media. Are you using a password manager to create and store strong, unique passwords for each site? Do you know how to spot a phishing email? And avoid those tempting but dangerous links. These small steps can make a huge difference in protecting yourself online.
Absolutely. It's about being empowered, not overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Rami, thank you so much for joining us today, demystifying the world of cybersecurity. It's been a really insightful discussion.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, everyone has a role to play in making the digital world a safer place.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And a big thank you to Darkvisory for sponsoring this discussion. Darkvisory is a cybersecurity firm dedicated to helping individuals and companies improve their security posture. Those are the good guys, folks. So if you're looking for expert guidance, be sure to check them out. Well, that's it for our discussion on cybersecurity. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.